Hello, I'm Robert Donahue from the Environmental Learning Research Centre. And faced with the imperative to include heritage in the curriculum revisions, we asked the question, is there recent historical evidence on early sustainable agroecological cultures of Southern Africa? And yes, there's been in the last 10 years a flurry of this, showing that early agroecological societies traded and had intercultural exchanges quite widely. And the one that was of interest to us were the Bokoni, where there is evidence of these stone settlements in the Mpumalanga area, and where there's historical evidence, and how they're uncovering how these were related to the Nguni heritage or built into this around the Xhosa, Venda, Sotho, Zulu, Pondo, Hlubi, and Indebele, for example. And this all flowed from successive dynastic periods that developed over centuries of migratory interaction. And this body of knowledge, this heritage, is reflected in this picture from the Nairobi Museum, where a lot of the heritage that we have and that we had was lost in the colonial period, where the colonial narrative dominated. And now this is being rewritten, and we are able to see dynastic migrations and historical records around the Bokoni from 800 AD through to 1200 AD, and now reaching into the current period, where their tracking of the seasonal movement of the sun, bringing the summer rains, was an important cultural capability, and where the village households were the foundation for an expansive process of taming the land, where people gathered imifino, they hunted, they used fire, and they expanded the grazing through this taming of the land to produce agroecological cultural landscapes. And here the knowledge practices circulated, expanded, and receded with change. Knowledge enabled people to develop local knowledges, learning, and change, and the communication happened around a triad of controls, where nature, the possibilities were expanded by the taming processes, there were laws and policies, and people were able to make choices and live in sustainable ways. Where there were vulnerabilities and risk, they were able to overcome those, and now we're in the present day faced with ESD as learning actions for more sustainable futures. Now, if we take this heritage and we try to map it as starting points for ESD and in the curriculum, there's evidence on climate, there's evidence on agriculture and gardening practices, there's evidence in relation to food that are really important for nutrition, there's evidence in relation to water and water conservation, then on biodiversity, and also on the marine ecosystems. So there's a rich heritage that goes beyond living heritage to past African heritage. And Gina Nhlope touched on this when she said, we can touch the past in our memories and we can feel the future flying on the wings of imagination. So there's a whole lot of literature from the colonial period where we're able to overturn a lot of the colonial narrative through recent research that has been done on dynastic histories and also on archaeology.